My name is Robert Jamison, and my practice is Robert Jamison Architects in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I have Robert Jamison. And if his face looks familiar, that means you are like me, and that you only watch TV when you can learn something, especially with your family, and you don't have to worry about any curse words or somebody humping on somebody in front of your two daughters. And that's why, because your Homemade Perfect is where you may see him, and I'm sure, has done other TV shows out there in the UK that we're not even allowed to see because of country codes and licensing deals, nonsense stuff. But he's going to give us the game on how he got to be this great architect, where if you guys haven't seen the show, you have to see how this man thinks. I mean, it's taken our thinking cap to a whole new level. So Robert, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks very much. I'm great. Thank you. That's a very generous introduction.
No, I tell you, I'm like you. We were talking off air, people, and Robert said he doesn't watch his own show, and I'm like, wow. And we rarely watch TV, but we want to learn how to build homes because we're in the process of looking for land. And you have just the way they should always pick you. I mean, tell me, how did you even start? Because I want to start from ground one. How did you start building and designing homes?
Well, of course, I went through the traditional university education model, which is 7 years. There's a three-year undergrad, year out in practice, 2-year postgrad, and then of course there's a few years before your chartership. So about 10 years and you're a chartered architect. But then that's only the beginning of the process. And then you need experience. So you end up spending a couple of years maybe working for someone who kind of inspires you, etc. So it takes some time to become a qualified architect. But in terms of getting then through, I'm kind of ambitious in a way that I understand my creativity, and I just want to build and create stuff. I want to create ideas, And I think architecture is a fantastic subject or course, because what it does is it forces you to look at the world around you, to understand the world that we live in, which is more than just material and detail. It's the colors, it's all the sciences. It's psychology, philosophy. It's the experience in other realities beyond the physical reality, if you get what I'm saying. So the journey beyond that and the other kind of places is also a way of reflecting and understanding our own experience of the world. Okay, but after I graduated from college, I then established my own practice after working for a short time for another company, because I wanted to get into building my own projects. And I spent a couple of years in Belfast with that practice, and I was starting to get kind of commissions and recognized, and my work was getting published, and I was winning awards. And then I decided to kind of transfer to London. So I relocated, had an idea. Within 4 weeks, I was set up in London. I had my own studio, it was a big move, but life is short. It's just a lap, And so I worked in London, and then again, the traditional model for the design practice is to move on to bigger projects, more public buildings, museums, theaters, schools, those kind of buildings that kind of can really, beyond the residential, But then it was 2008, 2009, the global, financial crash, let's call it, right? Yep. Not a collapse, not yet, but a crash, okay? And I had to close my practice. I was employing a couple of ex-students of mine, a great Belgian architect and a Northern Irish architect who were employed with me in London. But to wrap up my practice, it took me about maybe 8 months, and I was working then part-time on a building site as a, to actually earn more money. to close my practice, right? So it was really strange because I was working all the, weekends and every hour to build my practice and my projects. And all of a sudden I found myself, laboring on a building site to pay for the practice then to come to an end because I had purchased a one-way ticket to get out of Europe, to get out of the West, right? And I previously spent a couple of years working with a Vedic and Indian community. I designed a temple and a monastery, all based around ancient Indian texts, the translations of volume 12 and 13 of the Mahamatam, which was all about Vastu Shastra, which is essentially, the Indian ancient science of building, okay, spatial planning. So it was natural for me to get that one-way ticket to India, and I did. On the 16th of September, 2009, the next chapter of my life began, and it was only through that following, year, and I spent the following 6 years essentially as a nomad, because I wanted to explore the world. I wanted to understand different cultures, different peoples, how people just live and be and exist and dwell and all those things, and how they build and consider space and understand environment and what's important. And really the conclusion of that, where I'm at now, is that architecture needs to support a secondary. It needs to almost dissolve. The best architecture dissolves. You don't even see it because it allows relationships with other or with yourself to exist and is principal in that relationship, So I then traveled to India, and that was the beginning of a whole other exploration.
I want to go so deep into your creative process, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. And the way you create, and anybody who has seen your designs, could school even teach you that? That seems to be. So how important is it that you even go to school? Like, should school be like?
I say no, don't do it. I say, kids, don't go to university. It's a waste of money. You will become a debt slave. You don't want to become a debt slave. Don't go to university. The education system is not worth it. What you learn in university is not worth it. Now with YouTube or social media or a podcast, you can learn whatever you want. And it costs nothing but a Wi-Fi plug, whatever, So I'd say don't go to university. It's not worth it. There's people in university, dare I say this, who are academics, petrified of losing their position because that's all they know. And as we know with COVID, universities are just going that way. So they're not going to exist anyway. And the substandard education model is coming to an end. Now I say substandard in schools of architecture, and that's kind of a sweeping statement. But in my experience of schools of architecture, and I think what's interesting is that I believe the whole model of Western teaching is a bit kind of contrived or perhaps contrived, or as I would call it, it has lost its evolutionary trajectory has been impacted or diverted, right? In terms of what's natural, what is important to self and spirit and being and all those things that we are, okay? So I think that, mainstream education doesn't support that. I mean, it was Mark Twain who said, never let schooling get in the way of your education, right? Don't let schooling get in the way of your education. Tertiary level as well. Don't get into debt, okay? Don't keep yourself as free as possible, from all this. So I say at the moment, don't go to university. The world is in a place that there's a whole paradigm shift into something and what will emerge, I'm optimistic that it will be more wholesome, the pendulum will swing, and we will be in a whole other world that we can't even imagine now. I mean, it's, but I'm kind of, in my work, I kind of, kind of trying to philosophize on what that, or theorize on what that might be. And even in my consultations with clients, I'm saying to them, listen, pause, don't do anything, let's think about it. Don't get yourself in debt. What's your budget? Maybe think about paying off. So it's even a different way of practicing, only because of what's happened now with this COVID. Now, another thing I must say is that the Western model, right? The Western model of education comes from, the architecture comes from the seat of Western civilization, right? And which is the Greeks and the Romans, okay? But whenever I traveled and spent time in indigenous kind of parts of the planet, right? Particularly in India and Asia. But when I was in India, I purchased a motorbike because I wanted to get away from the. I'd never been on the road on a motorbike. I'd experienced on a motorbike, you know, in motocross, but never on the road. And I bought a motorbike in India to get away from people. I wanted to get away from Westerners. I wanted to kind of explore these ancient temples that were maybe 120 Ks up a dirt track where you would meet two, you know, Babas who were kind of holding, you know, this temple. But my point is that what you do, or what I realized, is that the West, right? And how I realized this is whenever I was traveling down the kind of west coast of India, and I had a hammock, and I was, you know, hanging up in trees and, you know, just sleeping under the stars. But you would meet a lot of people, but we hadn't the same, you know, the only means of communication how I kind of communicate with them was through drawing. And I would have a stick on the sand, and I would start to draw Ireland and where I was from. And then, of course, it was quite big in the map. And then, you know, the UK, and then, you know, you would draw, you know, Europe in the outline, and you work your way through the planet, and then you would draw India, and it was huge over here, but you would realize that Europe is actually really quite small, but yet our education, right, teaches us that this is, you know, this is the world we live in. It's not. It is not. And that's why I guess it's impacted on my practice, on how I think about space, because I think that living in these boxes, it comes from a tradition of architectural practice and teaching, which is not supportive of spirit, well-being, doesn't have health, doesn't have kind of, you know, the humanity at its center.
Can you talk about that? Because I was reading Seth Godin, his blog and a book, and he talked about how a front yard is just a luxury. Most people don't even use their front yard. And so what are we missing in the West? Is it just the connection to even just our neighbor? Because if you go to India or you go to Africa, you know your neighbor. They might even come eat with you if they smell something cooking.
Right. Community. I mean, if you look at the kind of, in terms of, I mean, the reason why places like, you know, medieval, you know, cities or villages or towns in parts of Europe and the hilltops of Italy or whatever, right, are really kind of become, you know, attractors for people going on holiday to explore these places because of what it makes them feel like, right? And it's not only the scale, because it feels more personal, more intimate, right? There's an intimate scale in this type of urban planning. Yet, you know, when, you know, of course, populations grow, technology expands, industrial revolution. I mean, look at you know, North America, you know, the cities are planned on the grid, and arguably the pedestrian is forgotten. I mean, I remember I spent a bit of time in Florida, you know, and wow, I mean, there is no social centers you have to drive everywhere to get to. You know, the sense of community doesn't really exist. It's always about protecting your land, you know, and it's just a different way that we've evolved. I call these kinks in our, you know, in our evolutionary trajectory, because that kink was brought on by the, you know, the birth of the motor car, and then kind of, you know, the cities were planned around, you know, this grid form. It was not really organized around the idea of how we live, how we want to commune together, you know, what that means, you know, personal space, you know, or collective space. Certainly, you know, I think that I just think that, I mean, it is what it is, you know, and that's why I guess we're so kind of, you know, I mean, even pushing us on to kind of social media sites, and where we have our communities there, because we don't have them around us. Even family. I think, you know, the natural way that a family exists is all together. Whenever I was traveling in India, I was often asked, where's your mother or father? I'm saying they're at home. And the response was, why are you here? Why are you here? You should be at home looking after them. You should be at home, you know, and they all live together, and they grow as a family, you know, that's about community, you know, and that is the energy it's about energy. I mean, life force energy, and the sharing of that. And, you know, whereas in the West, right, we've evolved in a way that has another, you know, there's another purpose, there's another way of living. And we don't, most people, it's not conducive to health, well-being, which is evident in the populations in the West.
Now, with all of that, you could write a whole series of books on that. But any plans on putting a book and putting the architecture and the soul into it? I mean, you could even structure your book different if you wanted to go so far, but so people can read what they're missing, because what you've seen, very few people in the West, even if they've seen it, they haven't really embraced it.
Well, the thing is, it's because I traveled. I was already a trained architect, right? I already had my own practice. I already had a way of thinking and theorizing and practicing and building, and so I already had that before I traveled proper. I mean, I traveled, and during that time period. But when I left for India, I was going up. Like I had no agenda. I wasn't coming back. I didn't know where I was going. I was just letting the universe unfold, right? And I'll tell you what, when you let the universe unfold, the opportunities or the experiences that you have will allow you to realize what universe is about. Really, it allows you to kind of, have these experiences that are so transcendent, perhaps, it makes you think that, maybe, just journeying, is the way we should be. Like naturally, we should be nomadic people. Naturally, but of course, we are born into a culture. We are born into a paradigm. We accept everything as it is, as normal, as the way we should be. We accept our housing types. We accept, all of it, all of it until we start to question it. And unfortunately, you can see, I think people are starting to question everything more. And I think that it's just going to lead to a shift. And, the age of Aquarius at the beginning of this year and how that shift, how that is the knowledge bearer. And I think things are going to start to kind of evolve into something that is more appropriate for the way and means we should be living. I mean, in terms of like talking about books or anything, it seems that, and of course I've thoughts about this, and I started a process online on my Instagram about anybody who wants to kind of, I'll start a library of ideas. That was at the beginning of, that was March 2021. I think I've over 100 anyway projects. I've got, I'd say I've got 300 hours of design conversations about projects and sketching. So it's, there's 100 episodes if you're homemade perfect type kind of work, because everything is unique, everything is individual, everything is tailored to understand the person, etc., etc. So but to write a book takes time. Okay, and I've engaged with I've been approached by a literary agency in London asking me if I would write this book about my ideas. And I'm like, well, I'm busy. I've got lots of ideas. I'll start the process, and I start to kind of, write. I've written a couple of chapters, but still, I think the world is transitioning so quickly that books, yes, we enjoy reading books, and I don't do kind of Kindles or things like that. I enjoy physically reading books, but I think in terms of sharing knowledge, this is the way to do it. This is a platform, whether it's podcasts or if you have a channel or some sort. I think that's a way to share information, because things just move so fast, and and we're evolving so quickly.
What's crazy about that, and this, I have more listeners than I have watchers, but for history's sake, like that, the algorithm could change and people could maybe want to learn and go deeper into, I'm not asking you how much your net worth is. That's no one's business, in my opinion. I'm asking you, how do you feel? But even now, when I watch YouTubes, I'm watching them at 0.15, 1.5, or because, and then I have to tell myself, I want to hear that cadence, that normal, like it's a conversation, and let me slow things down, because if not, we'll just be, full of knowledge, full of information, full of money, but we die full. I want to die empty. I want to give and do more giving, more living.
Yeah.
If I don't ask this question, I think I'll get in trouble by my 11-year-old. what does it take for you to design a home, worldwide? Because you can name your price now. I mean, you have TV, you have so many projects you mentioned.
Listen, I don't make money. That is the truth of it. I mean, like before this chat, we talked about, other, crypto and things like that, but I don't like, I had a conversation, right? Or an email exchange there this morning from someone who I charge £75 for them to register with me on my website. We then invite information from them. I assess it, and we get through the whole process for 75 quid, right? $100, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then I charge 400 plus VAT, 400, right? $500, right? Plus, I bet, okay? To do a consultation, 90-minute consultation, right? That's nothing. Okay, it is for a lot of people some money, but you cannot put a price on an idea. You can't value it, but I want to reach out to people who need it, who are living in building, who are having real problems in their, I mean, people come to me, it's really interesting, and I'm doing consultations, yeah, and sometimes I feel, the answer is not always architecture. The answer could be move to Florida, right? Yeah, right. The answer could be get a divorce, right? It really could. Or if, a better example might be there was a couple who wanted to extend the property to give their teenage son, his own space, and then they wanted to after he left the house, they wanted to travel. So the solution would be buy yourself an RV, park in the backyard. That's your son's living space. Whenever he goes, drive off. That's your vehicle, right? So it's about architecture, and of course, architecture, building is about building. But as Buckminster Fuller said, the great engineer architect, the difference between architecture and building is an understanding of the universe, right? And I feel in my work, I try and understand the universe of the individual, and then apply my own experiences. I mean, I'm talking about my own experiences plus all of the past life kind of, instinct. That's your instinct, right? You're feeling about projects. You feel your way through the projects. But I'm having a conversation, on email with a lady who said, listen, I think that's ridiculous, and I want my refund of £75. I'm like, no problem. Like, have it. I'm sorry if I kind of, but it's hard because I say, it's very difficult to monetize creativity. It's like, look at the great musicians, right? Who are sitting and they can't play gigs. They can't, and they're hugely creative, and they're one to kind of monetize that and want to try and make money off their craft. They want to give their creativity, their spirit to the planet, and they can't do it, at the moment. And I mean, a lot of projects came up. I mean, I've been working on consultations with people all over the world, including, New Zealand, South Africa, the States, all of the States, all over Europe, New Zealand. I mean, a theatre in New Zealand, was an early project I was working on, so there's all these projects, right? But Barbados, exotic projects, but I can't travel.
Yeah.
So it's almost like this process of going through, or this profile that the TV work has given me, right? All of a sudden, the whole world opens up, given all these projects, but I can't work on them. I can't actually physically say, I want to dedicate myself to that project, and that's okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that I had to modify. My office, my studio here is full of physical models, right? That's how we used to work. We don't work like that anymore. It's consultations because, and there would be another stage post whatever, not post 2022 maybe, where we will evolve again as a practice. But all I want to do is build, I want to kind of build a lot for myself. I was reminded the other day, people ask me, well, your house must be amazing, bench seating. And my sister gave me the opportunity a long time ago to actually build her house. And it became a project that's ongoing. And there's a steel bridge to connect. It's all kind of like just ideas. And she's like, yeah, go for it. Just go for it. And recently I kind of created this very deep 1.2 meter bench seating that I get a lot of abuse about on Twitter because people think bench seating, but it doesn't work. People don't understand why bench seating doesn't work, I don't understand them, to be quite honest, because it seems really kind of natural. It's a surface you sit on, you lie on, you can sleep on, but my sister has been a patron, kind of, and allowed me to work. But someone said the other day about, your house must be missing. And I'm like, well, I don't live in the house I designed. And he said, well, the cobbler's son has no shoes.
Now, why is that? Do you think because you would then be so super critical of what you do and say, I want to change that next week?
I can't afford it. I don't have the money. I can't. It's as simple as that. I actually, if I had the money to do it, I would have all these. I would be, I can't. I was just focused. Like that would be the studio project. Be making models, and I would be exploring that. I mean, I want to. And it's not a. See, my idea of a home is very different than people's idea, right? And on Instagram, I was invited to. Through email last year, I was invited to kind of comment on what I would do if I had £220,000. Okay, because there was this person who found himself in a situation. They had 220 grand through divorce, separation, and the house was sold. This is what they had. They had no family, nothing. What would I do? What should they do? And they were thinking they should go to a university town, buy a small apartment, rent out a room so there's a constant income, And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll put this on. I will do a 10-minute chat on Instagram. I put it up there. And really all I was saying was, this is what I would do, right? So I'm just saying, this is what you can do what you want. I shouldn't really, I advise you or influence you in any way. But if I had the money, I would first of all buy myself some land without planning because it's more expensive. So agricultural land, but ideally on, a forest, okay? Because agricultural land here is about 10 to 15,000 pounds an acre, but you can get an amazing forest. You can buy forests and they're absolutely amazing, for very cheap. Buy yourself a forest, get yourself, and then what would I do? I would then get myself a camper van, an RV, right? And start working on it. Well, that cost me maybe 20 grand, right? And then I'd get myself a transparent structure where I can start to grow, foodstuffs, and I'm off grid, and then all the infrastructure for that, maybe add another 60, 70, 80 grand for that. And then I would start to look at the apparatus of living, as I call it. The apparatus of living. How do you bathe? How do you cook? Where do you sit? Because I don't want to sit on a chair. I mean, I'm sitting on a chair, but a sit is an interrupted squat, right?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be sitting on chairs. They are not supportive of our biomechanics. And what I find most perplexing is that we celebrate the designs of these chairs, right? Yet they do not support our biomechanics. They are unhealthy for us. But which kind of takes me back to where my work is going in terms of, whilst I'm thinking about space and environment and architecture, I'm thinking about the apparatus of living. And I had a master's studio in Queen's University in Belfast where we explored the apparatus of living. And what was natural and what was unnatural, and why, what was the evolutionary history. Even the knife and the fork and the spoon is amazing history when you think about it, and the weapon, and I want to hold my meat, and the equipment, and decorum, and all of that there, So you can even think about what was the kink in our evolution that took us to sitting up there, we wanted to be like the aristocrats, or, and like even a toilet, okay, I've been talking about toilets for a long time with my students, and the thrown toilet, it causes cancers, it causes IBS. We should be squatting. And, those who, see the world as a landscape to sit and to move around, those are the people who are mobile, flexible, healthy, etc. So it's about healing and health, Sorry, I got on a tangent there in terms of your question, but my point is, I don't necessarily want to build a house with 3 bedrooms. It's more of spaces to inhabit. And my work has moved to a place where I design buildings I design rooms that cannot be labeled, or without a label, like living room, bedroom, because I want to sleep maybe in the living room, or I want to sleep where I in the summer up there, where I, on that surface, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's more about, how do we inhabit the planet? How do we inhabit our environment? Of course, we need shelter, right? Interestingly enough, there's a guy who I follow, and he's talking about how, the evolution of our species, right? And the idea of of how can we have evolved, right? Three, and about the missing link and all that kind of theory and theorizing about that. And how can we evolve when we need technology to survive, right? We need technology, we need clothing to survive, right? So, and then you can ask questions about, well, what created us? Who created us, et cetera, which is a whole other tangent, right? But essentially, I find it fascinating because what's our history? Like, what's our true history? Like, what is our, like, I mean, I can go into some tangents here, but, in my reality, E doesn't equal MC squared, right?
Yeah.
In my reality, we don't rotate around the ecwicenter or the equatorial center of the sun.
Yeah.
But we're pulled through the solar system or the universe, and it's a helical universe model, which we don't teach our kids, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, why not? So you into all this, yeah.
This is why your YouTube. I think we got a challenge, because you right now the minimalist is trending and on for us Netflix, but all the financial people are saying we all have too much stuff. And even what you're talking about with chairs, I've had guests laugh at me because they say, "Do you have an office chair outside?" Yes, this is my office. And this office chair, Robert, you can't see it, but I can kick my feet out and do this and lean all the way back.
Yeah.
My living room, I don't lay on my very comfortable couch because it makes me go to sleep. So if I want to have a conversation, I have bean bags. Yeah. People say, "Why do you lay?" Because I'm going to talk to you. I can have my drink.
Yeah.
I don't fall asleep.
You get it. And then people question me about bench seating doesn't work. What do you want a two-seater and a three, and pay what money for something that you don't enjoy? It's not comfortable. First of all, you're born into a world that suggests that this is comfort. So sit on it. And you sit on it, you might be comfortable for 10 minutes and you get up again, you go make yourself a cup of tea, you go and grab a beer, you walk around. Why am I not, it's not quite comfortable there, I'll sit on the floor. I sit on the floor. I sit on the floor. At the moment, I need to, and then I can adjust my posture, and if I want to, I feel my way, and that's, a heated floor, of course, in this part of the world, heated floors, amazing, but I think that, it's just really interesting, how people have different perceptions of how they want to live. And that's why I guess you're perfect. I was just throwing ideas out there. I didn't care if it was selected or not. I didn't care if it was, if they wanted to build it or not. I was pushing them. I was responding to their needs, and I was giving them something that if they'd have chosen it, it would have transformed their world. But their karma never allowed them to do it. Their karma was not, or they're aligned for them to take on this as an opportunity. They had to work through the stuff in their lives or whatever and live in the same or this new environment that was being created for them. That was not what I was offering. And that sounds quite arrogant. And I don't mean to be arrogant but I just feel that, I don't mean to be arrogant because the creative process is not you anyway. It's not me as an individual. It's a kind of an energy that comes from, right? You're channeling an energy, or your antenna, right? You're an antenna for us, an idea. And ideas are everywhere. You need to be open to those ideas, It's really interesting talking about being open to ideas, right? Another tangent. I do apologize, but
go. I love it.
Another tangent, right? So I was interviewed by the Belfast Telegraph, which is a local newspaper, right? About health and well-being. I was asked, would I be up for an interview? Yes, no problem. Quite kind of surprised because you're a local, celebrity. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just me. I'm just human. I do, But anyway, I thought yes, because I take that seriously, my health and well-being, because I want to die with knowing my last breath, right? I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. I don't want to be, and I was asked about, so I kind of, but the stuff that I talked about or that I had written in my, that was in my dialogue was talked about the need for other experiences I talked about the likes of psilocybin or the likes of, ayahuasca or these things to allow, to open the mind, right? I mean, that little open the mind, it's important. We need to open our minds to kind of realize that what we experience or what we see is not necessarily how life needs to be or can be, if you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, the reason why I say that is because the stuff that I find important, I talked about my like my supplements, what's important to me to become para-immune, so I have a strong immune system. All the important things, edited out, taken out, not included. But the important things to talk about creativity, and this is my journey. My creativity, I feel, has been harnessed and energized and supported and evolved by these practices, and I've been practicing, I've been a yoga practitioner for, 11 years. I meditate, pranayama, all these other practices, that I feel is important to connect with spirit, to connect with self. And then the offering of your creativity is the pure offering of your spirit that is only in service to other, if you understand what I'm saying, So I think.
Yeah. How do you, well, let me, because you kind of mentioned, I ask all my guests what a community give back that they are doing or that they want to do in the future. And you kind of talked about how money, you charge people what they should be able to afford, especially coming to someone, you're coming to a creative, an expert in their field. You should have some money and a lot more. But I want to know what your future plan is, because people write about you. Books like The Future is Faster Than You Think. People who have, billion-dollar, net worth. Yeah. And talk about 3D homes and 24 hours. And you're somebody who could say, you know what, that's great, but let's do it like this. So
yes,
it's
agreed.
Yeah. So what is where do you see the future of your give back?
Okay. Ultimately, all I want to do is give my creativity in service to others. It's as simple as that. Right? So I have a lot of ideas of how. Loads of ideas. But I think the future of architecture is engineering, is fabrication, is almost production line manufacturing to deal with the housing issues, but to create, a product, a type, a living type, a space, a room, a volume, right? That we can all appropriate or occupy and live in. What's really interesting as a species, or, we're all creative, right? And when, for people who squat in buildings, right? They know how to live in those spaces. Their spirit teaches them, or not teach them. It guides them into where they should be sleeping, how they should be. We are amazing individuals, right? Now, I say that because I would like to create product. I would like to offer product. Okay, so I have an idea for a building. I have ideas for that becomes the teaching school, right? Now, the teaching school, I have a 4-year-old, and I think about him going to school and these buildings, and I want to I would love to design, and I have designed that model classroom, but it becomes something that's engineered, and it can be a philanthropist could pick it up, and they can become a patron to their school, or it becomes a product, right? So it's about product, okay? But ultimately, what I want to do is create a school of architecture, of creativity, right? Because I think that understands what creativity is and can transcend the existing outdated models, right? Because kids, as I said at the start, kids are being charged ridiculous amounts of money for poor education. They're becoming debt slaves, and it's unethical, it's unfair, and we need a new model that renders, again, to quote Buckminster Fuller, that renders the existing model obsolete, right? So I talk about an apprenticeship school where you can learn architecture, you can learn the idea of creativity, architecture, whilst making money, right? Now, I set up I was invited during my 6 years as a nomad. I was invited, and for 1 year I went to London, and I was invited to create a creative community I spent 2012 doing that. I had 12 builders. I had to keep them busy. That was the brief. And I had a master plan for this huge site. And now it's a very successful creative community, right? Whenever I ended up coming back to Belfast, I had that idea. And in this building I'm in, this is an old school from 1884, an old school building. It was for sale by auction. It was £75,000. I phoned a friend of mine who works in London. I said, here, buy this. Because, and this will be your, this is yours, but buy it. It's worth a lot more than that. And I will kind of become the custodian of it. And then I will work on a project that can see this as a building without a function, that can absorb any function. So it's a permanence in architecture. It does not waste resources, so that it doesn't need to be knocked down and rebuilt in another generation. But ultimately, it's a school. It's this model of this apprenticeship model of teaching. Now, and I'm not saying this, and I'm going to be the head teacher and people are going to come and learn from me. I'm saying there are so many brilliant minds out there. I'm just saying, let's all gather together and let's teach. But by practicing, by teaching our practice, then people who will want buildings, then like government organizations will want to come to us. Because we're an education model, because we're giving the best output, whether it's architecture, product making, whatever it is, and it becomes something that's all inclusive, and it is just assists in the development of humanity. And I think that's a model that would be great to set up, and a model of practicing as an architect, but also to kind of help the kids, and the generations.
So, and let me know if in the future you need help with this. University of the People. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
And I'm going to email it to you.
Okay.
It is a accredited, free tuition,
right?
All online platform.
Yep.
They have even graduate school. I just learned about it myself, and I'm like, free education. I paid over $100,000 for mine. And I even had some paid for, with scholarships, but not enough. Yeah. And most of that was because I had to borrow because, and I didn't pay it back, interest. But we would think we'd want the most educated people, right? Mm-hmm. And so for you to reach out to them and say, I have this model, I will create a course. I just wrote a course on how to travel to Africa that right. I made it, $20. Right. And it took a lot of time to put together because I wanted people to have an A to Z, whether you had been to Africa or it's your first time by yourself. But I think that model with University of the People would definitely work because we are the university now.
Yeah, and education should be free. Yeah. Education was free whenever I was at university. I was getting paid to go to university. I got grants. We would queue up for a grant, and then we would go to Students' Union, which is our union bar. And we would sit there and we would discuss and theorize, and but we would be working, and there'd be a real social interaction. Now, how the universities have changed. Kids can't stay in late at night because of health and safety reasons. We had a 24-hour university. We had raves in our studio. Like our studio was a party, and it was the best education because when you're experiencing life, and ultimately that's the most important thing about going to university. Forget about the studies because you can they can come. But it's the life, it's people you meet, it's all of it, And I think that the existing model, I think because of these, well, maybe because of where we're at with COVID and lockdowns and everything, I think that model's gone. I think universities will try and keep things online, and students are going to go, you know what, there's this university for the people. I'm going there, and I think that's really important. You need to stop. It's like the kids just paying money for substandard education is a real problem.
And it's a problem because I know, again, bachelor's, I had to pay. I was a terrible student in high school. I had other things on my mind, sports, girlfriends, business, I was, trying to do. But grad school, I got pulled in for a professor saying, you really know this stuff online. I only teach it out of a book. I don't even know how to build a website. And I thank Dr. Murray for letting me teach for my time and also to pay for some of that education.
Yeah.
But that's what we need. You guys are getting a lot, those listeners. I want to do something because I don't want to give them a game overload. But somebody's mind just exploded, and they said, I never thought about any of this. And we're going to take this offline, but I want them to know when you talk about your students, where can they go if they want to, get the guidance and the wisdom from you?
From me, everything's within. What they need to do is just get on. Like I would say go, to everybody, like graduates, instead of going, or students, instead of going on to that tertiary level education, just travel, but travel without an agenda. Just go. And they'll say, well, I can't fly. And I'm like, get on a bicycle, go to the port, get, a boat somewhere, then go to the next, go cycle somewhere until you can't cycle anymore, and then walk. Because I tell you what, that is your education. That is what you want to do. And then after you've done all that, then come back to me and we will collaborate on all sorts of stuff, because your mind will be so open. You'll be just wanting to give to the universe, And I mean, it's not easy though. It's not easy to do that kind of, like whenever I arrived in India, I get really sick I was sick. I was ill for about 2 weeks. And I was thinking, I need to go home. But it was almost like a test, right? I need to get through. And once I get through it, that's whenever the whole world opened up. And, if you can get through those adversities, you become stronger. And I think that just travel, but I mean, you can get me through my website if you want to kind of, have a chat. I mean, there's people who contact me all the time, and in fact, I've got a chat with somebody who's thinking about going on after their A levels to do something, and their folks want me to have a chat with them to kind of, just as a bit of guidance. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll chat. I'll do that. No problem. Give them half an hour of my time. No problem whatsoever, because the kids need to be inspired. At that age, you don't really know what you're doing. You're forced into making these decisions that aren't really your own. So I'm saying, just stop, just kind of, just stop and think about what you're going to do. But do not be afraid. Fear will destroy you. Fear of not going to university. Fear of not FOMO, it will destroy you. So just chill, Shanti.
You guys have gotten the game. We're going to take this offline. Make sure you share this with somebody, man, because even if it's just that last part, that the fear will destroy you, you guys have learned something. I know. Be blessed.